Smokey. Today we are going to be discussing Kingsman, the Golden Circle. And I will tell you why I'm talking like that coming up next. What's up, people? Today we are going to be talking about Kingsman, the Golden Circle. Now, this is the sequel to Kingsman, the Secret Service, which was based off of a graphic novel that was written by Mark Millar and actually Matthew Vaughn. He had something to do with it as well, and that was basically created to spark the idea for the movie Kingsman, the Secret Service. This is the sequel, and it brings back Taron Egerton as Eggsy here, and Eggsy is in a different place than he was in the first movie. You see, Eggsy is actually on top of the Kingsman. He is one of the best of the Kingsmen, and no longer is he going through his trials, and he's at the top of his game here. But when we have a lead character at the top of his game, there is only one place that we can take him to, and that is down. And that is what Poppy sets out to do. Poppy is played by Julianne Moore, and she basically takes down all of the Kingsmen with the exception of Eggsy and Mark Strong's Merlin. Now, right off the top, people, Taron Egerton as Eggsy here. In the first movie, I felt like he felt kind of uncomfortable in that lead role, and Colin Firth's character really overshadowed him in that movie. Here, I feel like Taron Egerton is the best part of this movie because I really get a good sense of the duology between the thuggish kind of hip kid and the gentleman spy that is Eggsy. And it's really cool how much of a duality you get out of him, and he definitely does the best of both worlds on that, and I just want to congratulate Taron Egerton for doing a great job. Now, like I was saying, Eggsy has it all. In the matter of fact, that woman from the last movie, the sex joke from the last movie, well, the girl that was involved with that is actually his girlfriend here, and like we know from the last movie, she is royalty, and he has a pretty good-looking girl, but at the same point in time, he is a spy. He can't tell her everything, and there is that whole kind of back and forth going on between them where she doesn't know if she can trust him a lot. Now, Poppy herself is a pretty underdeveloped villain, but I do like what Julianne Moore does with her. She has this whole like 50s kind of vibe. It's like she took over a small town and just made everything 50s. She actually, I know he wasn't around in the 50s, but she like took Elton John and just captured him, and she wants to like make him her slave. But that whole part of it is really cool, and I like Julianne Moore in this movie. She does a lot with a role that is very underdeveloped, and I feel like there's a lot of scenery chewing when it comes to her, but when it comes to that, there is nobody that does it better than Julianne Moore. So Eggsy and Merlin have no choice but to turn to the Statesman, which is the U.S. equivalent of the Kingsman, and boy, you know, in the first film, when it comes to Brits, I feel like there aren't the typical British stereotypes. But one stereotype in that first movie that I will talk about is when Colin Firth goes into the church in America, all of them just feel like yokel hicks. And that is exactly what the Statesmen come across as here, just a bunch of like Texan kind of hickish people. And you know what? I have relatives in Texas. People don't really talk like this. They're gonna talk like this. Woo-wee! Yo! You have Channing Tatum as Tequila. Yeah, that's his name. And man, he gets punked out in this movie. He gets punked out. I don't want to give it away, but seriously, he should not even be on the poster of this movie. He's in so little of it. But at the same point in time, he is just a Texan stereotype. I mean, at one point in time, you just hear him say, "That dog don't hunt." And then you have Jeff Bridges. You know, Jeff Bridges runs The Statesman, and man, you know what? If anybody reminded me of the Colonel from Kentucky Fried Chicken, not just like how he looks, because he doesn't really look like the Colonel, but just how he carries himself. Oh, I expected him just to go around the Statesman table while people were sitting at it being like, finger licking, finger licking, finger licking, good. And then you have Pedro Pascal here, who is Whiskey, and Whiskey is going to have these two guns that you get a shoot in the air. Whoa, yeah, like Yosemite Sam. And he's also, he has this lasso that I swear to God, he flips that thing around, and every single time he uses it on somebody, he does a little spin and he jumps in the hula hoop before he throws it. Man, it's just a really, really bad stereotype. And for some people, I know that's a problem, but for me, honestly, I found it hilarious. I can laugh at that kind of a thing, but I can realize that for some people, that is going to be bad. And that is a recurring theme in this movie where I just recognize that things in this movie are just not as good as the first one, still being good, and I just laughed at this one a lot. A real lot. Sometimes it's unintentional, like The Statesman, but other times it's just like, wow. This is like the Looney Tunes, Looney Bin Jim version of that first one. This movie is over the top. Over the top. To the point where at one point in time, like Elton John just straight up just scissor kicks somebody straight to the head. Now, you also have Colin Firth's return. And either you're going to think that this is ridiculous but funny, or you absolutely hate it. I am kind of in the realm of hating it. You know, I am not going to spoil it for anybody, but he does come back. The explanation for why he is alive is ridiculous. And I mean ridiculous. Like, Looney Tunes ridiculous. But at the same point in time, they felt like they needed to have him back, and he does come back here. It takes him a while to become himself again, but once Colin Firth does slip back into that role, and once they allow him some room to breathe, I do feel like he feels at home in the role, and I don't like him as much this time as I did last time, but he is still good in this movie. But that just leads to another problem with this movie, and that is the fact that this is way too long. Way too long. This is like almost an 2.5 hour movie, and that's because there are just way too many characters to follow, way too many plot lines to follow, way too many things to do, and it just needed to be tampered down a lot. And this is actually a compromised version of what was supposed to be like a 4-hour movie that was cut in two, and we were supposed to get like two 2-hour movies out of it, where they just decided to just cram it into this 2.5-hour film. So that is why this feels just so whiplash-inducing, because you are just taking here, there, and everywhere, and just shown this character, this guy, this thing, that thing, and it is just all over the place. They also have Halle Berry here, who is the Statesman's equivalent of Merlin. She is the computer person, and she is given very little to do. And then at the same point in time, they want to just say like, oh no, she really is important, and they give her like one big scene at the end. They feel like that's enough. You know what? I don't think so. So what about the action in this movie? The action is good. It's good. Not great. It's good. You know the herky-jerky, like zoom in, zoom out, slow-mo that they did in that first one, especially in that church scene. That is just every single action scene in this movie. And as much as I like it, and I do like it, it's overused. It's overplay in this movie. And at times, in certain action scenes, I felt like it was too much. The first action scene in the movie, it was too much for me. Too much CG, too much herky-jerky going back and forth with the camera, and I felt like the first action scene in this movie was just Looney Tunes ridiculous. So Poppy, her whole motivation is that she is a drug dealer. She is trying to get her drugs legalized and trying to blackmail everybody into legalizing her drugs. That way she can make all the money, and she has this convoluted plot that we don't spend enough time on at all, where she has this whole way of doing it. And you know what, people? Julianne Moore does a lot with this. A lot. She is a really great villain stuck in a movie that doesn't really feature her that much, unfortunately. And you know what? There's a part in this movie where I felt like they could have really gone like Batman 89. I won't spoil anything, but remember those Joker ads in that Batman 89? They had a chance to do that here, and yet it comes across too juvenile, and it doesn't have that same tongue-in-cheek nature that the Batman 89 did, and I feel like that was a missed opportunity. I felt like they could have really went there with her, and that would have been really, really cool, and a callback to earlier movies, earlier superhero movies, because one thing that I will say about this movie that was in the first one but isn't in here, there aren't as many callbacks to older superhero movies like there were in the first one. Guys, in the end, Kingsman: The Golden Circle was a fun time, but the more you go and think about it, and the more you think about the ridiculous things that are in this movie, the more you kind of just go, that wasn't as good. That wasn't as good. And for a filmmaker like Matthew Vaughn, who I really like a lot, this is one of his weaker efforts, but at the same point in time, it is still a good movie. I will give it a 7 out of 10. It's not that bad. It's just something that doesn't live up to its predecessor. So guys, I have a lot planned for you. I actually am going to be starting my Halloween marathon. I'm going to be giving you a couple of Halloween reviews, but first, I have to get through Blade Runner, because I did promise you guys that. I'm going to review the Blade Runner 4K that came out last month, and then I'm going to go see the new Blade Runner this weekend, so I will definitely give you guys those 2 reviews. And as far as my Kingsman review, I will have to catch up with the Secret Service when this movie comes out. That'll be around like mid-January, early February, so I'll have to catch up with that review at that point in time. I'm just pretty busy with these videos right now. And where else can you find me? Well, besides this, I don't like to, promote myself here, but I do have a podcast on SoundCloud.com that is called the Gaming by Me podcast. That's where I review games. You can find me on SoundCloud. I will post the link down below. And I also am reviewing for HighDefDigest.com. That's a website where me and a bunch of other people write reviews for Blu-rays. I am actually reviewing the 4K Blu-ray of Kick-Ass for them this month, so you guys will definitely see that. It'll be out in a couple of days, and I thank all of you guys for listening. I have so much coming up for you guys. You guys won't want to miss it. Check back to my channel, subscribe. You guys know where to catch me. HDByMe, and I will see all of you next time.